Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Crouch Hair Podcast. Today is going to be a little bit of some college basketball. And it's been a while since we've been on the podcast, obviously, with the holidays and all that. But it's been slightly busy, and I'm sure most of you were too. So I hope you guys had a good holidays. You had a good New Year's, good Christmas, good everything. Got some great presents, I'm sure. But there's also, and before I really start this video, obviously this is a basketball episode. Just want to address what happened last night. Maybe some of you were watching, maybe some of you weren't. Obviously, yesterday was a big day for college and NFL football. But the tail end of it, which was the Bills Bengals game, there was a serious injury to Damar Hamlin, Bills safety. He is currently in critical condition in the University of Cincinnati hospital after making a tackle on T. Higgins and collapsing on the field. So obviously not a good situation there. Game's been suspended, so all that jazz. Obviously, not a good situation. Thoughts and prayers are to Damar Hamlin. We wish him well. We hope that he's okay. Um, if you follow the Instagram channel, I've been putting out as many updates as I can get from the NFL or wherever else I can find info. I'm sure you guys have your own info as well, but uh, obviously a pretty somber sight over there in Cincinnati. We wish Damar Hamlin the very best. We hope he's okay. Uh, College foot or college basketball. Um, and we have not done the college basketball episode in quite some time. So the last time I think we did a college basketball episode was the preseason. So there's been a lot of changes since the preseason poll as we begin the new year. In fact, the number one team on here actually lost last night to a team that beat them as they were the number one team last year, and that's Purdue. They were undefeated until last night when Rutgers came into Mackey Arena, and upset a number one ranked Purdue team for the second straight year. So obviously is not going to make Purdue fans happy. Probably irksome to the very bone. But Boilermakers, number one team, they had a really good start to this season. Played really very good basketball. Matt Painter, very good head coach. I think a lot of people still kind of expected the Boilermakers to be good, but this good is pretty impressive. Then you have Houston sitting at number two. Um, Good team. Their conference is not special, but this is a defensively minded team with a offense that is okay. They kind of remind me of Michigan. They're very defensive. Well, the old not Michigan now. I get not current Michigan because current Michigan. They would have. They would not be able to beat any of these teams in the top 25. They wouldn't even be close to any of these teams. They might have just smoked Maryland, which makes no sense, but they're not good. And so they might have a rough time just making it to the tournament. Anyways, Houston, solid team. Really, one loss on the year. They lost that home game to Alabama, who is another really good team, and obviously just a little bit farther here on the list. But Houston, really good team. Obviously, conference is not that special, but Houston's got a great team. Then you got the Kansas Jayhawks at number three. Kansas is another really good team. I honestly, I would not be surprised to see this Kansas team win the whole thing. I have watched this team play multiple times. Of course, they have that one loss, which comes to the Tennessee Volunteers. But I've watched this Kansas team play multiple times this season, and they're dangerous. I mean, this is a very, very good Kansas team. Now, they may have lost that early game to Tennessee. They may have almost lost to Wisconsin earlier in the year. But those are both good teams, and really since then they have been absolutely dominant. They've been destroying everybody that they've been essentially playing. And I really like this Kansas team. I think they'll get a 1 seed. Now I know they won last year, and it's pretty much impossible to go back to back. But I would not be surprised to see Kansas winning it all this year. Honestly, I guess at this point I would have either them or Arizona probably as my favorite to win it all, as I do love Arizona's team as well. Which, speaking of, is at number 5. But number 4 is UConn at 14-1. They took their first loss of the season to Xavier on, I believe it was New Year's Eve. The Musketeers coming up with a huge win against the UConn Huskies, who are having a really impressive season. As I mean, they've been solid for a couple of years here now, but UConn has never come back to the national prominence they used to be. Like constantly a number one team. Of course, they dominate still women's basketball, but UConn men's basketball has never really had the success that it used to. And now all of a sudden, they're at number 4 in the country. They've had a really good season and really UConn kind of looking like UConn again for men's basketball, but really impressive so far. For UConn, I believe I don't really know who they have. I mean, I know they still have Sonogo, but other than that, I have no idea who on earth plays for UConn. I have not really watched them much, but really good team over there in Connecticut. UConn Huskies playing very good basketball. And I love Arizona's team. Arizona at number 5. I have watched this team play a lot as well, and Arizona is a very good team. I love their offense. Doesn't mean they're an offensive team. Defense is a little more optional for this squad, but they are a very good offensive team. I love Arizona. Great offense, and their offense is so smooth. They have good shooters. They're very athletic. They're very long, which also gives them a huge advantage in rebounding. We saw them play Tennessee. They've played some good teams this year. Arizona's really good, and I know they had a disappointment in the tournament last year, and I believe it was I think it was at Houston when they took that loss in the tournament last year when they were number 1. Houston was number 5. But I like this Arizona team. I think they're a Final Four team. I think they could even be a championship team. I love this Arizona team. They'll be very dangerous come March. Then you have number 6, who is Texas. Texas is another really good team. Now, this is a team that's really full of transfers. And they have a couple nice recruits that are now coming in this year. They lost a couple of their 30 million transfers that came in last year. But this is a very good Texas team. This is another team that I expect to have a very good run in the tournament. At least I would say Elite 8, possibly Final 4. But Texas is really good, and they're also I don't know if Chris Beard has come back yet. I think he's still being suspended. Obviously, the whole mess with what was it, sexual assault? Or no, was it sexual assault? I don't remember. Something to do with his girlfriend, and I don't know if he's back or not. But Texas only one loss in the year. That lost to Illinois. This is a very good Texas team, no matter who it's being coached by. Obviously, coach stability is a big thing, but this is a very good Texas team. Will be important for them to actually get a stable head coach and someone who for them to get a head coach, or for Chris Beard to clear whatever the heck is going on. I really don't remember. I also don't care to really remember. But this is a very good Texas team. I think these guys are really good and should be right there with Kansas, I would say, for the top team in the Big 12. Then you have Alabama at number 7 with a huge win over Houston. They also took a tumble to Gonzaga in what was an offensive shootout. Defense was optional in that game. But Alabama's a good team. Alabama is very talented. Of course, also in foot. Of course, now all of a sudden they're talented for basketball too, which probably makes a lot of people irritated because they get tired of them winning in football. Now here they are winning in basketball. But this is a good Bama team. I would expect them to be right in the top of the SEC. There's a lot of good SEC teams this year, but I think Alabama will be one of those teams in the top. They should be very good this year. Expect Bama to be a player in the NCAA tournament. And then at number 8, you have Tennessee, who I'm not the biggest fan of the Volunteers. Of course, I also don't like their football team. But I mean, I've watched the Tennessee basketball team. They're okay. I'd say they're a good team, but kind of like last year when Michigan got the upset against Tennessee when they were the 3 seed, I think that could be very eerily similar for Tennessee this year. They might get past, the first round game, but when they get to the second or maybe if they get into the Sweet 16, I don't think they'll go farther than that. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're good, but I think the 8 ranking might be a little high for them. Of course, I haven't really watched much of Tennessee, but I watched them against Arizona. I watched them against Kansas. They got killed by a Colorado team who really is not any good, which was earlier in the year, granted, but I'm not really all that impressed by Tennessee. And then number 9 is Gonzaga, one of my favorite teams. Gonzaga, not in a great conference. They've played some big teams and they've barely escaped some, and they've lost the others. Gonzaga is a solid team. I think they're another candidate for an early exit from the tournament. Possibly, one of those teams who gets upset early in the tournament. I don't know about first round. But Gonzaga's got a couple decent players. They're not bad. Obviously, they still got Drew Timme, Julian Strother's over there. Razir Bolton's an okay player, transfer from Iowa State. They got a LSU transfer, I'm pretty sure, as well. Gonzaga's got some solid players, and they might win a couple games in the tournament, but I think that might be as far as they go. Because Gonzaga, they're going to easily probably blow out most of their conference. I mean, the only teams that might give them a bit of a tough time are like St. Mary's and maybe San Francisco or Santa Clara, and maybe BYU as well in their last year in the conference. But other than that, Gonzaga's got no competition in that conference, and really are better than those teams too. So it's hard to really, I mean, and a lot of people will say this, and I say this every year too, but it's hard for me to really give Gonzaga that much credit because all their tough games are early in the year. And when you're playing early in the season, you're not your best. When you're at your best is when you're playing, in the conference, and their conference is just terrible. Now, if they were in the Pac-12, I might give them a little more credit because they get teams like USC, UCLA, who will be in the Big Ten soon, but USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, they got a couple decent teams in the Pac-12, which, for Gonzaga, that'd be a much better conference to play, but they just in playing in the WCC, there's not much competition, and the competition that they do have is at least okay. They're still significantly better than, so obviously they just they dominate everybody. So it's hard to really expect much from Gonzaga when they continue to play crud competition and then they go in the tournament and then flop every time, almost every time. And then number 10, we have UCLA, who is 13-2. This is a good UCLA team. They did lose Johnny Juzang. They still have Jaime Jaquez, though, as he's stuck around, along with Tiger Campbell. I think they have a couple new freshmen as well. So UCLA's got a good team, also obviously well coached by Mark Cronin. I think UCLA will probably be the top team in the Pac-12 coming out. Them or Arizona too. Don't forget about them. UCLA or Arizona probably gonna be your top teams in the Pac-12. Honestly, I think Arizona will probably be a top team, but UCLA will be a close second. UCLA is a really good team, and I expect a lot from the Bruins. I think they'll be really good. They'll probably be like a 3 seed. UCLA should be very good this year. Number 11 is Virginia at 10-2. Michigan nearly came up with an upset against this team, and well, blew it. Obviously, Tony Bennett teams are very, very talented at playing defense. These aren't really offensive teams, they're all defensive. Of course, Virginia has been playing through its own tragedies. I mean, at the beginning of that episode, we were talking about the Bills, and obviously with Hamlin, Damar Hamlin, not Harmon, Damar Hamlin. When we were talking about Hamlin being in critical condition, once again, thoughts and prayers out to him and his family, teammates, everybody. Hope he's okay. But Virginia had its own, tragedy this year, early in the year, when there were three, I believe, football players who were shot and killed in a shooting on a bus. So obviously that did not. Obviously that hurt. That obviously did not. That didn't go well for Virginia. Obviously, a lot of people were hurt by that. A lot of people, obviously, very sad for Cavaliers, anyone in Virginia, and our hearts go out to those who were affected, and to those who passed away in that accident. Obviously, very tragic. Never should happen, honestly. But Virginia's a good team. They played some pretty spirited basketball too. They had a really good stretch. They were undefeated for quite a while. They have taken a couple losses lately. One of them, I believe, to Miami, Florida, who is right below them. But Virginia's a really good team. Tony Bennett teams always play good defense. Offense is not necessarily their thing, but defense certainly is. And Virginia always is able to beat teams with that. Of course, their shooting is going to have to be on point, but their defense is always smothering. I mean, you look at Michigan. Michigan was shooting like 50, 60% in the first half, and they had an early 11-point lead, I think, at halftime on Virginia, and then scored like 20 points in the second half. That's what Virginia does. They're a smothering defense, and they make it tough on you. I mean, after Michigan had that hot first half, they made adjustments, and Michigan did nothing. Of course, they also threw that game away, but so Virginia is a good team, though. You can expect a lot from the Cavaliers. Next, we have Miami, Florida at 13-1 at number 12. I don't really know much about Miami, Florida. I know they have a couple players, I think, who returned from the team who made a run last year. But other than that, I have no idea who on earth Miami, Florida has. I know they're a decent team. Obviously, 13-1. Their only loss coming to a Maryland team that has completely fallen off a cliff here towards the this last month. But Miami, Florida, decent team. Don't know much about them, but they're solid. Then you got number 13, who has dropped a little bit after I believe it was a loss to LSU, and that is Arkansas. Arkansas is a really good team. 11-2. That with LSU being that second loss. Their other loss, I believe, was Creighton, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it was Creighton. That's right. But Arkansas. Creighton has been good lately, but Arkansas, they're a good team. A lot of freshmen on this team. This is a very, very young team. A lot of true freshmen. A lot of highly touted true freshmen. This is an interesting Arkansas team. I actually have not really watched this team enough to really know what the heck they're like. I know they have a lot of high freshman recruits. Of course, I've been watching a lot of football, so I haven't also been able to watch a lot of college basketball. But Arkansas, a very very young team. So I'll have to see a little bit more of them. But Arkansas, pretty solid. Then at number 14 is Wisconsin, and I have no idea how this is a 10-2 team, but here we are. Wisconsin, 14th in the country at 10-2. They lost Johnny Davis. They lost, I believe, their other top contributor, Brad Davis, and they lost him. And somehow they're 10-2. I don't know how they keep winning games, but they are. Now they're ranked 14th. doesn't make any sense to me because this Wisconsin team is okay. I don't even think anyone expected this team to even be above 500. But I mean, like I said, here they are. They're playing good basketball and only have 2 losses on the year. So not a big Wisconsin fan, but tip my hat to the Badgers. Well done. Good start to the year. And then at 15th, we have the Indiana Hoosiers at 10-3. Big expectations for this Indiana team, with some nice freshmen coming in. Tracy Jackson Davis still around. Dig Xavier Johnson still around. Race Thompson's still around. You got a lot of returning players as well as good freshmen coming in, so a lot of expectations around Indiana. And it was going well to start the year. I mean, they were playing pretty well. And then they played some of the bigger teams that they had on their schedule, like Kansas and Arizona, and they did not do so well. They did beat North Carolina, which honestly I guess is not really saying much since they have completely just been a major league disappointment this year. But Indiana, they played Arizona and Kansas, and both of them more or less manhandled them. More so, Kansas manhandled Indiana than Arizona. But in both games, Indiana just had a horrible start to the game, and both teams jumped out to big leads, and Indiana the entire time was just playing from behind. Now they did try to make a comeback in those games, and they would close the gap a little bit, but every time both of them would come right back. Both of them would extend the lead back out to where it was, and then Indiana would be just put right back at bay. So I think for the Hoosiers, I mean they're a good team, but they got to figure out a way to start off the game well. They come out of the gates really slow. If they come out of the gates like they finish games, they could be a much better team. But Indiana, 15th in the country, pretty solid team. Number 16, we have the Duke Blue Devils at 11-3. They've had a couple interesting losses. I think this is a very good Duke team. I think they're a number one recruiting class in the country, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of top recruits. Duke is also very young, of course, along with Arkansas. Duke is a very young team. A lot of high recruits on this squad. They've had a couple lackluster games. But when you got guys like Tyrese Proctor and Filipowski, I don't remember what the other guy was, but he's a really big power forward. I think it's like Kyle Filipowski, I think, or something like that. But Duke is good, and obviously with young teams, there's a lot of growing pains. There's a lot of growing pains. It takes a while for these teams to grow up and get into and get used to the college level, because obviously it's their first few games at the college level, and so it takes some time to adjust. Um, but when they do, Duke's good. They got serious talent, and I think this team, if it blends together well, and all the transfers and freshmen that they have on their team gel, Duke will be a dangerous team in the tournament and could be a Final Four team. But they're going to have to gel, and they're going to have to play together. Duke's been a little sloppy at times. And then at number 17, we have TCU. I'm not the biggest TCU fan. I know TCU has a lot of its players coming back from a year ago, which is why they're ranked here at number 17, even though they have a loss to Arkansas Pine Bluff, or was it somebody else? It was some bad team. But 12-1 is TCU. I mean, they're decent. I wouldn't say they're bad. But to really rank them 17th, I think you can find somebody else in the top 25. Now, college basketball top 25 doesn't nearly mean as much as college football, because it really matters it really matters for the lower teams if you make it to the tournament. The top 25 doesn't mean as much as college basketball. This is more bragging rights than anything else. But TCU, they're a decent team. That's about as far as I would go. They're decent. Not great, but they're decent. And number 18, we have Xavier, who hasn't really been in the top 25 all that much in recent years, but has found a little bit of some room here as they've jumped up to 18th after that upset over UConn last week. Xavier's a solid team. I've watched them a little bit. They seem like a solid squad. I would expect this team to make the NCAA tournament, maybe as like a sixth seed. I would say. Xavier's good. Big East is solid. Xavier should be a tournament team and should find. I think they'll get like maybe a round one win and lose in the second round or something like that. But Xavier's good. Number 19 is Baylor. Baylor has been a little lackluster this year. Obviously, I guess they lost to I think they lost to Iowa State on New Year's Eve, but they've had a lot of some they've had some clunkers. Baylor, I think they lost to Illinois earlier in the year. That was their one loss, which wasn't bad. Illinois was a good team. They haven't played well recently, but at the time, Illinois was really good. Illinois is a solid team, and people were like, okay, yeah, Illinois is a good team. Or well, no, it was was it Virginia or was it Illinois? It was Virginia. They lost to Virginia, and it really wasn't all that close against Virginia. And people were like, okay, that's not good. And then you saw that Marquette game, and a lot of people were really taken aback by that score when they got absolutely destroyed by Marquette, like 96-70. And everyone's like, what in earth? And then Baylor had a clunker against Iowa State. I don't remember the score of that game, but Baylor's had a lot of clunkers, and it really is not pretty to have two or three 20-point losses on your schedule on your resume. Baylor needs to clean that up, but they're still a good team. I don't think they're a bad team, but I don't know if they're as great as they were for their championship run, obviously. But Baylor's good. I think they'll be at least a tournament team. Where who knows? But Baylor should be good, and Baylor will have a solid team again. And joining the rankings this week is number 20 Missouri, having a really good start to the season. They were undefeated for a while before getting destroyed again by their big rival Kansas in the border war. Last year they were destroyed. This year they got destroyed. But then they took it out on another rival of theirs in Illinois and got them into the top 25 at number 20. Missouri has been a very offensive team. Defense is not very good at all. But the offense has been very good for Missouri. They played pretty well. Will that continue? Who knows? But Missouri number 20, good start to the year. Always tends to help. You just can't have a late season collapse. And then Purdue was one of two undefeated teams in college basketball until last night, which now leaves only one undefeated team in all of Division I college basketball remaining, and that is the number 21 ranked New Mexico Lobos of the Mountain West. New Mexico, undefeated on the season. I don't really know if they really played anybody. Their best win, I guess, is San Francisco on the road. San Francisco at home, of which they won by 3. Mountain West has been honestly playing pretty well with teams like UNLV, Utah State, both going undefeated for a while. Boise State's a solid team. I believe you have somebody else in the Mountain West who's a solid team as well. Oh, San Diego State's that's a really good team. So New Mexico obviously is going to have a lot of competition in the Mountain West, and we'll see if New Mexico's win streak can continue, and how long it'll continue. I don't think it'll last very long at all, but 14-0 start, you gotta be excited if you're a Lobo fan. Because if you're in New Mexico, dear Lord, you got nothing else to be excited about. So why not root for the lone team in New Mexico? And then at number 22, you have Auburn, who now is at 11-2. They've not really looked that special. I don't really know if they are that special. Auburn's an okay team. I would not expect much more from the Tigers. And then number 23, you have a unique one. I can't even remember the last time I've seen this team in the rankings, if ever. And that's Charleston, who is 14-1. They've beaten teams like Virginia Tech. No, they didn't beat Virginia Tech. I don't remember who they beat. But they had they played the Charleston Classic and they beat a couple decent teams. I believe the one loss might have been Virginia Tech, but Charleston tells you how much I know about this team. Charleston 14-1. Um, I don't know anything about them, but why not give some love to a team that never really has any success and never ever sees the light of day? Why not? So Charleston at number 23. And then at the bottom of the poll here, you have Ohio State at number 24. Obviously not my favorite team, but they're a okay team. They look pretty good. They have a couple nice freshmen, a couple guys who came back. Ohio State should be solid. We'll see how Zed Key play or Zach, is it Zed or Zach? I think it's Zach Key. I don't remember who it was. It's something Key. But Ohio State's got a couple solid players. They should be solid. They should be a good team. They'll be a tournament team for sure. Depends on what seed they get. And then at number 25, who just snuck in, is Iowa State. Don't really know much about the Cyclones either. They got absolutely throttled by Iowa in that rivalry, and Iowa's just lost to South Dakota or no Southern Illinois. And then this got killed, I think, by somebody else. So not really all that enthused by the Cyclones at all. After getting, this. I remember watching it. It was like 22 to, or no, it was like 26-4 to start the game against Iowa, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's bad, dude. But yeah, Iowa State, solid team. Maybe decent, maybe gets in the tournament. I don't really know much else. And then you see the other teams that are getting votes there. And then four teams dropped out in Kentucky, who's had a very underwhelming season. Mississippi State, who had a good start and has faded lately. West Virginia, who had a short-lived spurt in the rankings, and North Carolina, who's also been a major league disappointment this year, probably the biggest, with being number one to start the year and now isn't even ranked at all. So that is it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That was a lot to cover. We'll try to do this more consistently, especially with now college football essentially out the window. Of course, we still have the national championship left to go with Georgia and TCU. Yes, Michigan somehow lost to TCU. I really don't still want to think about how on earth we lost that game because they should have won that game by half a mile, but we kept shooting ourselves in the foot. Anyways, that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be doing college basketball about every week. We'll just be doing, rankings videos. Because normally we used to do where we would go through every single top 25 game and we would go through it. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to take way too long, especially with all the top 25 matchups we have on Saturday. And it's going to take way too long. It's too time taking. So the easier way to do it is just top 25 video. You go over the top 25 teams. Maybe you say who they beat, where they, and briefly go over who they beat and how they got there, what we think. Because then otherwise it would be like an hour, 2 hours long going through all the matchups. So I don't think anyone's really intrigued by that. Anyways, I'll stop talking now. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios, everyone.